Hey guys, how are you? Okay, so today we are going to read the very last part of the book. I hope that you've been working on some of the activities that have been on your planner and have been getting, to get to reflect a little bit on the book and the message of inclusivity, how discrimination affects people, and being kind. So definitely keep thinking those things and start reflecting on the things that you're reading. I hope you're enjoying the book, whether you're reading it alone and then listening to this as a side extra review, or you're reading along with me, or just listening, right? So we are on page 226, Heaven. I woke up later on and it was still dark. I got out of bed and walked into mom and dad's bedroom. Mommy, I whispered. It was completely dark, so I couldn't see her open her eyes. Mommy, you okay, honey? She said groggily. Can I sleep with you? Mom scooted over towards Daddy's side of the bed and I snuggled up next to her. She kissed my hair. Is your hand okay? I said. Via told me Daisy bit you. It was only a nip, she whispered in my ear. Mommy, I started crying. I'm sorry about what I said. Shh, there's nothing to be sorry about, she said, so quietly I could barely hear her. She was rubbing the side of her face against my face. Is Via ashamed of me? I said. No, honey, no. You know she's not. She's just adjusting to a new school. It's not easy. I know. I know you know. I'm sorry I called you a liar. Go to sleep, sweet boy. I love you so much. I love you so much too, Mommy. Good night, honey, she said very softly. Mommy, is Daisy with Grans now? I think so. Are they in heaven? Yes. Do people look the same when they go to heaven? I don't know. I don't think so. Then how do people recognize each other? I don't know, sweetie. She sounded tired. They just feel it. You don't need your eyes to love, right? You just feel it inside you. That's how it is in heaven. It's just love, and no one forgets who they love. She kissed me again. Now go to sleep, honey. It's late, and I'm so tired. But I couldn't go to sleep. Even after I knew she'd fallen asleep, I could hear Daddy sleeping too, and I imagined I could hear Via sleeping down the hallway in her room. And I wondered if Daisy was sleeping in heaven right then, and if she was sleeping, was she dreaming about me? And I wondered how it would feel to be in heaven someday and not have my face matter anymore, just like it never even mattered to Daisy. Understudy. Via brought home 3 tickets to her school play a few days after Daisy died. We never mentioned the fight we had over dinner again. On the night of the play, right before she and Justin were leaving to get to their school early, she gave me a big hug and told me she loved me and she was proud to be my sister. This was my first time in Via's new school. It was much bigger than her old school and thousand times bigger than my school. More hallways, more room for people. The only really bad thing about my bionic lobot hearing aids was the fact that I couldn't wear a baseball cap anymore. In situations like these, baseball caps come in really handy. Sometimes I wish I could still get away with wearing the old astronaut helmet I used to wear when I was little. Believe it or not, people would think seeing a kid in an astronaut helmet was a lot less weird than seeing my face. Anyway, I kept my head down as I walked right behind Mom through the long, bright hallways. We followed the crowd to the auditorium where students handed out programs at the front entrance. We found seats in the fifth row close to the middle. As soon as we sat down, Mom started looking inside her pocketbook. I can't believe I forgot my glasses, she said. Dad shook his head. Mom was always forgetting her glasses, or her keys, or something or other. She's flaky that way. You want to move closer? Said Dad. Mom squinted at the stage. No, I can see okay. Speak now, or forever hold your peace, said Dad. I'm fine, answered Mom. Look, there's Justin, I said to Dad, pointing out at Justin's picture in the program. That's a nice picture of him, he answered, nodding. How come there's no picture of Via? I said. She's an understudy, said Mom. But look, here's her name. Why do they call her an understudy? I asked. Wow, look at Miranda's picture, said Mom to Dad. I don't think I would have ever recognized her. Why do they call it an understudy? I repeated. Is that what they call someone who replaces an actor if he can't perform for some reason? It's what they call someone who replaces an actor if he can't perform for some reason, answered Mom. Did you hear Martin's getting remarried? Dad said to Mom. Are you kidding me? Mom answered, like she was surprised. Who's Martin? I asked. Miranda's father, Mom answered, and then to Dad, who told you? I ran into Miranda's mom in the subway. She's not happy about it. He has a new baby on the way and everything. Wow, said Mom, shaking her head. What are you guys talking about? I said. Nothing, answered Dad. But why do they call it an understudy? I said. I don't know, Augie Doggy, Dad answered. Maybe because the actors kind of study under the main actors or something. I really don't know. I was going to say something else, but then the lights went down and the audience got very quiet very quickly. Daddy, can you please not call me Augie Doggy anymore? I whispered in Dad's ear. Dad smiled and nodded and gave me a thumbs up. The play started, the curtain opened, the stage was completely empty except for Justin, who was sitting on an old rickety chair tuning his fiddle. He was wearing an old-fashioned type of suit and straw hat. The play is called Our Town, he said to the audience. It was written by Thornton Wilder, produced and directed by Philip Davenport. The name of the town is Grover's Corners, New Hampshire, just across the Massachusetts line, latitude 42 degrees 40 minutes, longitude 70 degrees 37 minutes. The first act shows a day in our town. The day is May 7th, 1901. The time is just before dawn. I knew right then and there I was going to like the play. It wasn't like other school plays I've been to, like The Wizard of Oz or Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. No, this was a grown-up singing, and I felt smart sitting there watching it. A little later in the play, a character named Mrs. Webb calls out for her daughter Emily. I knew from the program that that was the part Miranda was playing, so I leaned forward to get a better look at her. That's Miranda, Mom whispered to me, squinting at the stage when Emily walked out. She looks different. It's not Miranda, I whispered. It's Via. Oh my God, said Mom, lurching forward in her seat. Shh, said Dad. It's Via, Mom whispered to him. I know, whispered Dad, smiling. Shh. The ending. The play was so amazing. I don't want to give away the ending, but it's the kind of ending that makes people in the audience teary. Mom totally lost it when Via, as Emily said, goodbye, goodbye world, goodbye Grover's Corner, Mama and Papa, goodbye to clocks ticking and Mama's sunflowers, and food and coffee and new iron dresses and hot baths and sleeping and waking up. Oh, Earth, you're too wonderful for anybody to realize you. Via was actually crying while she was saying this, like real tears. I could see them rolling down her cheeks. It was totally awesome. After the curtains closed, everyone in the audience started clapping. Then the actors came out one by one. Via and Justin were the last ones out, and when they appeared, the whole audience rose to their feet. Bravo! I heard Dad yelling through his hands. Why is everyone getting up? I said. It's a standing ovation, said Mom, getting up. So I got up and clapped and clapped. I clapped until my hands hurt. For a second, I imagined how cool it would be to be Via and Justin right then, having all these people standing up and cheering for them. I think there should be a rule that everyone in the world should get a standing ovation at least once in their lives. Finally, after I don't know how many minutes, the line of actors on stage stepped back and the curtains closed in front of them. The clapping stopped and the lights went up and the audience started getting up to leave. Me and Mom and Dad were on our way to the backstage. Crowds of people were congratulating the performers surrounding them, patting them on the back. We saw Via and Justin at the center of the crowd, smiling at everyone, laughing and talking. Via! Shouted Dad, waving as he made his way through the crowd. When he got close enough, he hugged her and lifted her off the floor a little. You were amazing, sweetheart. Oh my God, Via, Mom was screaming with excitement. Oh my God, oh my God. She was hugging Via so hard I thought Via would suffocate, but Via was laughing. You were brilliant, said Dad. Brilliant, said Mom said, kind of nodding and shaking her head at the same time. Hey, you, Justin, said Dad, shaking Justin's hand and giving him a hug at the same time. You were fantastic. Fantastic, Mom repeated. She was honestly so emotional she could barely talk. What a shock to see you up there, Via, said Dad. Mom didn't even recognize you at first, I said. I didn't recognize you, said Mom, her hand over her mouth. Miranda got sick right before the show started, said Via, all out of breath. There wasn't even time to make an announcement. I have to say she looked kind of strange because she was wearing all this makeup and I've never seen her like this before. And you just stepped in right at the last minute, said Dad. Wow. She was amazing, wasn't she? Said Justin, his arm around Via. There wasn't a dry eye in the house, said Dad. Is Miranda okay? I said. No one heard me, but no one heard me. At that moment, a man who I think was a teacher came out to Justin and Via, clapping his hands. Bravo, bravo, Olivia and Justin. He kissed Via on both cheeks. I flubbed a couple of lines, said Via, shaking her head. But you got through it, said the man, smiling ear to ear. Mr. Davenport, these are my parents, said Via. You must be so proud of your girl, he said, shaking their hands with both his hands. We are. And this is my little brother, August, said Via. He looked like he was about to say something, but suddenly froze when he looked at me. Mr. D, said Justin, pulling him by the arm. Come meet my mom. Via was about to say something to me, but then someone else came over and started talking to her, and before I knew it, I was kind of alone in the crowd. I mean, I knew where Mom and Dad were, but there were so many people all around us, and people kept bumping into me, spinning me around a bit, giving me that 1-2 look, which made me feel kind of bad. I don't know if that was because I was feeling hot or something, but I kind of started getting dizzy. People's faces were burning in my head, and their voices were so loud it was almost hurting my ears. I tried to turn the volume down on my low body ears, but I got confused and turned them louder at first, which kind of shocked me, and then I looked up and I didn't see Mom or Dad or Via anywhere. Via! I yelled out, started pushing through the crowds to find Mom. Mommy! I really couldn't see anything but people's stomachs and thighs all around me. Mommy! Suddenly, someone picked me up from behind. Look who's here, said a familiar voice, hugging me tight. I thought it was Via at first, but then I turned around, and I was completely surprised. Hey, Major Tom, she said. Miranda, I answered, and I gave her the tightest hug I could give. Miranda. Part 7, Miranda. I forgot what I see so many beautiful things. I forgot that I might need to find out what life could bring. And Dane, beautiful things. Camp Lies. My parents got divorced the summer before 9th grade. My father was with someone else right away, and in fact, though my mother never said so, I think this was the reason they got divorced. After the divorce, I hardly ever saw my father, and my mother acted stranger than ever. It's not that she was unstable or anything, just distant, remote. My mother is the kind of person who has a happy face for the rest of the world, but not a lot left over for me. She never talked to me much, not about her feelings, her life. I don't know much about what she was like when she was my age. Don't know much about the things she liked or didn't like. The times she mentioned her own parents, who I've never met, was almost about how she wanted to get as far away from them as she could once she'd grown up. She never told me why. I asked a few times, but she would pretend she hadn't heard me. I didn't want to go to camp that summer. I had wanted to stay with her to help her through the divorce, but she insisted I go away. I figured she wanted the alone time, so I gave it to her. Camp was awful. I hated it. I thought it would be better being a junior counselor, but it wasn't. No one I knew from the previous year had come back, so I didn't know anyone, not a single person. I'm not even sure why, but I started playing this little make-believe game with the girls in the camp. They'd ask me stuff about myself, and I'd make things up. My parents are in Europe, I told them. I live in a huge townhouse on the nicest street in Northridge River Heights. I have a dog named Daisy. Then one day I blurted out that I had a little brother who was deformed. I had absolutely no idea why I said this. It just seemed like an interesting thing to say. And of course the reaction I got from the girls from the bungalow was dramatic. Really? So sorry. That must be tough, etc., etc. I regretted saying this the moment it escaped my lips. Of course, I felt like such a fake. If Via ever found out, I thought she'd think I was such a weirdo, and I felt like a weirdo. But I have to admit that there was a part of me that felt a little entitled to this lie. I've known Augie since I was 6 years old. I watched him grow up. I've played with him. I watched all 6 episodes of Star Wars for his sake, and so I could talk about him. I could talk to him about the aliens and bounty hunters and all of that. I'm the one that gave him the astronaut helmet he wouldn't take off for 2 years. I mean, I'm kind of earned the right to think of him as my brother. And the strangest thing is that these lies I told, these fictions, did wonders for my popularity. The other junior counselors heard it from the campers and they were all over it. Never in my life have I ever been considered one of the popular girls in anything, but the summer camp, for whatever reason, I was the girl everybody wanted to hang out with. Even the girls in the bungalow 32 were totally into me. These were the girls at the top of the food chain. They said they liked my hair, though they changed it. They said they liked the way I did my makeup, though they changed that too. They showed me how to turn my t-shirts into halter tops. We smoked. We snuck out late at night and took the path through the woods to the boys' camp. We hung out with the boys. When I got home from camp, I called Ella right away to make plans with her. I don't know why I didn't call Via. I guess I just didn't feel like talking about stuff with her. She would have asked me about my parents, about camp. Ella never really asked me about things. She was an easier friend to have in that way. She wasn't serious like Via. She was fun. She thought it was cool when I dyed my hair pink. She wanted to hear all about those trips through the woods late at night. School. I hardly saw Via at school this year, and when I did, it was awkward. I felt like she was judging me. I knew she didn't like my new look. I knew she didn't like my group of friends. I didn't much like hers. We never actually argued. We just drifted away. Ella and I badmouth her to each other. She's such a prude. She's so this. She's so that. We knew we were being mean, but it was easier to ice her off if we pretended she had done something to us. The truth is, she hadn't changed at all. We had. We'd become these other people, and she was still the person she'd always been. That annoyed me so much, and I don't know why. Once in a while, I'd look to see where she was sitting in the lunchroom or check the electives list to see what she'd sign up for, but except for a few nods in the hallway and an occasional hello, we never really spoke to each other. I noticed Justin about halfway through the school year. I hadn't noticed him at all before then. Other than that, he was the skinny, cutish dude with thick glasses and longish hair who carried a violin everywhere. And one day I saw him in front of the school with his arm around Via. So Via has a boyfriend, I said to Ella, kind of mocking. I don't know why it surprised me that she'd have a boyfriend. One of the three of us, she was totally the prettiest, blue eyes and long wavy dark hair, but she just never acted like she was at all interested in boys. She acted like she was too smart for that kind of stuff. I had a boyfriend too, a guy named Zach, and when I told him I was choosing the theater elective, he shook his head and said, "Careful you don't turn into a drama geek." Not the most sympathetic dude in the world, but very cute. Very high up on the totem pole, a varsity jock. I wasn't planning on taking theater at first, and then I saw Via's name on the sign-up sheet and just wrote my name down on the list. I don't even know why. We managed to avoid each other throughout most of the semester, like we didn't even know each other. Then one day I got to theater class a little early, and Davenport asked me to run off additional copies of the play he was planning on having us do for the spring production, The Elephant Man. I'd heard about it, but I didn't know what it was about, so I started skimming through the pages while I was waiting for the Xerox machine. It was about a man who lived more than 100 years ago named John Merrick, who was terribly deformed. "You can't do this play, Mr. D," I told him when I got back to class, and I told him why. "My little brother has a birth defect and has a deformed face, and this play would hit too close to home." He seemed annoyed and a little unsympathetic, but I kind of said that my parents would have a real issue with the school doing this play. So anyway, he ended up switching it to our town. I think I went for the role of Emily Gibbs because I knew Via was going to go for it. It never occurred to me that I'd beat her for the role. What I miss most. One of the things that I missed most about Via's friendship is her family. I loved her mom and dad. They were always so welcoming and nice to me. I knew they loved their kids more than anything. I always felt safe around them, safer than anywhere else in the world. How pathetic that I felt safer in someone else's house than my own, right? And of course I loved Augie. I was never afraid of him, even when I was little. I had friends that I couldn't believe I'd ever go over to Via's house. His face creeps me out, they'd say. You're stupid, I'd tell him. Augie's face isn't so bad once you get used to it. I called Via's house once just to say hello to Augie. Maybe part of me was hoping Via would answer it. I don't know. Hello, Major. Hey, Major Tom, I said, using my nickname for him. Miranda! He sounded so happy to hear my voice it actually kind of took me by surprise. I'm going to a regular school now, he told me excitingly. Really? Wow, I said, totally shocked. I guess I never thought he'd go to a regular school. His parents had always been so protective of him. I guess I thought he'd always be that little kid like in the astronaut helmet I gave him. Talking to him, I could tell he had no idea that VA and I weren't close anymore. It's different in high school, I explained to him. You end up hanging out with loads of different people. I have some friends in my new school, he told me, a kid named Jack and a girl named Summer. That's awesome, Augie, I said. Well, I was just calling to tell you I miss you and I hope you're having a good year. Feel free to call me whenever you want, okay, Augie? You know I love you always. I love you too, Miranda. Say hi to Via from me. Tell her I miss her. I will. Bye. Bye. Extraordinary, but no one there to see. Neither my mother nor my father could see the play on opening night. My mother because she had this thing at work, and my dad because his new wife was going to have her baby any second now, and he had to be on call. Zach couldn't come to opening night either. He had a volleyball game against Collegiate he couldn't miss. In fact, he had wanted me to miss the opening night so I could come cheer him on. My friends all went to the game, of course, because all their boyfriends were playing, and Ella didn't come. Given a choice, she chose the crowd. So on opening night, no one was there. No one that was remotely close to me was even there. And the thing is, I realized in my third or fourth rehearsal part that I was good at this acting thing. I felt the part. I understood the words I spoke, and I could hear the lines as if they were coming from my brain and my heart. And on opening night, I can honestly say I knew I was going to be more than good. I was going to be great. I was going to be extraordinary, but there would be no one there to see. We were all backstage, nervously running through our lines in our heads. I peeked through the curtain at the people taking their seats in the auditorium. That's when I saw Augie walking down the aisle with Isabel and Nate. They took 3 seats in the front 5th row near the middle. Augie was wearing a bow tie, looking around excitingly. He had grown up a bit since I'd last seen him, almost a year ago. His hair was shorter and he was wearing some kind of hearing aid now. His face hadn't changed a bit. Davenport was running through some last-minute changes with the set decorator. I saw Justin pacing off stage left, mumbling his lines nervously. Mr. Davenport, I said surprising myself as I spoke. I'm sorry, but I can't go on tonight. Davenport turned around slowly. What? He said. I'm sorry. Are you kidding? I muttered, looking down. I don't feel well. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm going to throw up. This was a lie. It's just last-minute jitters. No, I can't do it, I'm telling you. Davenport looked furious. Miranda, this is outrageous. I'm sorry. Davenport took a deep breath like he was trying to restrain himself. To be truthful, I thought he looked like he was going to explode. His forehead turned bright pink. Miranda, this is absolutely unacceptable. Now take a deep breath and... I'm not going on, I said loudly, and the tears came to my eyes fairly easily. Fine, he screamed, not looking at me. Then he turned to a kid named David, who was the set decorator. Go find Olivia in the lightning booth. Tell her she's filling in for Miranda tonight. What? Said David, who wasn't too swift. Go! Shouted Davenport in his face. Now! The other kids had caught on to what was happening and gathered around. What's going on? Said Justin. Last minute change of plans, said Davenport. Miranda doesn't feel well. I feel sick, I said, trying to sound sick. So why are you still here? Davenport said to me angrily. Stop talking, take off your costume, and give it to Olivia, okay? Come on, everybody. Let's go, go. I ran backstage to the dressing room as quickly as I could and started peeling off my costume. 2 seconds later, there was a knock and Via half opened the door. What's going on? She said. Hurry up and put it on, I answered, handing her the dress. You're sick? Yeah, hurry up. Via looked stunned, took off her t-shirt and jeans and pulled the long dress over her head. I pulled it down for her and then dipped up the back. Luckily, Emily Webb didn't go on until 10 minutes into the play, so the girl handling hair and makeup had time to put Via's hair up in a twist and do a quick makeup job. I've never seen Via with a lot of makeup on. She looked like a model. I'm not even sure I'll remember my lines, Via said, looking at herself in the mirror. Your lines. You'll do great, I said. She looked at me in the mirror. Why are you doing this, Miranda? Olivia! It was Davenport, hush shouting from the door. You're on in 2 minutes. It's now or never. Via followed him out the door, so I never got a chance to answer her question. I don't know what I would have said anyway. I wasn't sure what the answer was. The performance. I watched the rest of the play from the wings just off stage, next to Davenport. Justin was amazing, and Via in the heartbreaking last scene was awesome. There was one line she flubbed a bit, but Justin covered for her, and no one in the audience even noticed. I heard Davenport muttering under his breath, good, good, good. He was more nervous than all of the students put together. The actors, the set decorators, the lighting team, the guy handling the curtains. Davenport was a wreck, frankly. The only time I felt any regret, if you could even call that, was at the end of the play when everybody went out for their curtains call. Via and Justin were the last of the actors walking out on stage, and the audience rose to their feet when they took their bows. That, I admit, was a little bittersweet for me. But just a few minutes later, I saw Nate and Isabel and Augie make their way backstage, and they all seemed so happy. Everyone was congratulating the actors, patting them on the back. It was that crazy backstage theater mayhem where sweaty actors stand euphoric while people come to worship them for a few seconds. In that crush of people, I noticed Augie looking kind of lost. I cut through the crowd as fast as I could, and I came up behind him. Hey, I said, Major Tom, after the show. I can't say why I was so happy to see Augie again after so long, or how good it felt when he hugged me. I can't believe how big you've gotten, I said to him. I thought you were going to be in the play, he said. I wasn't up to it, I said, but Via was great, don't you think? He nodded. 2 seconds later, Isabel found us. Miranda, she said happily, giving me a kiss on the cheek. Then to August, don't ever disappear like that again. You're the one who disappeared, Augie answered back. How are you feeling? Isabel said to me. Via told us you got sick. Much better, I answered. Is your mom here? Said Isabel. No, she had work stuff, so actually not a big deal for me, I said truthfully. We have 2 more shows anyway. I don't think I'll be as good as Emily, good an Emily as Via tonight. Nate came over and we had basically the same exact conversation, and then Isabel said, look, we're going to have a late night dinner to celebrate the show. Are you feeling up to joining us? We'd love to have you. Oh no, I started to say. Please, said Augie. I should go home, I said. We insist, said Nate. By now, Via and Jessa had come over with Justin's mom, and Via put her arm around me. You're definitely coming, she said, smiling her old smile at me. They started leading me out of the crowd, and I have to admit, for the first time in a very, very long time, I felt absolutely happy. Part 8, August. You're going to reach the sky. Fly, beautiful child. Eurythmics. Beautiful child. The 5th grade nature retreat. Every year in the spring, the 5th graders of Beecher Prep go away for 3 days and 2 nights to a place called Browerwood Nature Reserve in Pennsylvania. It's a 4-hour bus drive. The kids sleep in cabins with bunk beds. There are campfires and s'mores and long walks through the woods. The teachers have been prepping us about this all year long, so all the kids in the grade are excited about it, except for me. It's not even that I'm not excited, because I kind of am. It's just that I've never slept away from home before, and I'm kind of nervous. Most kids have sleepovers by the time they're my age, and a lot of kids have gone to sleepaway camps or stayed with their grandparents or whatever. Not me, not unless you include hospital stays, but even then, Mom and Dad always stayed with me overnight. But I never slept over at Tata and Papa's house or Aunt Kate or Uncle Poe's house. When I was really little, that was mainly because there were so many medical issues, like my track tube needing to be cleaned every hour, or reinserting my feed tube so if it got detached. But when I got bigger, I just never felt like sleeping anywhere else. There was one time when I half slept over at Christopher's house. We were about 8 and we were still best friends. Our family had gone for a visit to his house, and me and Christopher were having such a great time playing Lego Star Wars that I didn't want to leave when it was time to go. We were like, please, 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 can I have a sleepover? So our parents said yes, and mom and dad and Via drove home, and me and Christopher stayed up till midnight playing until Lisa, his mom, said, okay, guys, time to go to bed. Well, that's when I kind of panicked a bit. Lisa tried to help me go to sleep, but I just started crying and I wanted to go home. So at 1 a.m., Lisa called mom and dad drove all the way back to Bridgeport to pick me up. We didn't get home till 3 a.m., so my one and only sleepover up till now was pretty much a disaster, which is why I'm a little nervous about the nature retreat. On the other hand, I'm really excited. Known for. I asked mom to buy me a rolling duffel bag because my old one had Star Wars stuff on it, and there was no way I was going to take that to the fifth grade nature retreat. As much as I love Star Wars, I don't want to be what I've known. I don't want to be what I'm known for. Everyone's known for something in middle school. Like Reed is known for really being into marine life in the oceans and things like that. And Amos is known for being a really good baseball player. And Charlotte is known for having been in a TV commercial when she was 6. And Jimena is known for being really smart. My point is that in middle school you kind of get known for what you're into, and you have to be careful about stuff like that. Like Max G and Max W will never live down their Dungeon and Dragons obsessions. So I was actually trying to ease out of the whole Star Wars thing a bit. I mean, it will always be special to me, like it is with the doctor who put in my hearing aids. It's just not the thing I want to be known for in middle school. I'm not sure what I want to be known for, but it's not that. That's not exactly true. I do know what I really want. I'm really known what I'm really known for, but there's nothing I can do about that. A Star Wars duffel bag I could do something about. Packing. Mom helped me pack the night before the big trip. We put all the clothes I was taking on the bed, and she folded everything neatly and put it inside the bag while I watched. It was a plain blue rolling duffel, by the way, no logos or artwork. What if I can't sleep at night? I asked. Take a book with you. Then if you can't sleep, you can pull out your flashlight and read for a bit until you get sleepy, she answered. I nodded. But if I have nightmares? Your teachers will be there, sweetie, and Jack and your friends. I can bring Babu, I said. That was my favorite stuffed animal when I was little. A small black bear with a soft black nose. You don't really sleep with him anymore, do you? Said Mom. No, but I keep him in my closet in case I wake up in the middle of the night and I can't go back to sleep, I said. I could hide him in my bag. No one would know. Then let's do that, Mom nodded, getting Babu from inside my closet. I wish they allowed cell phones, I said. I know, me too, she said. Though I know you're going to have a great time, Augie. You sure you want me to pack Babu? Yeah, but way down there where no one can see him, I said. She stuck Babu deep inside the bag and then stuffed the last of my t-shirts on top of him. So many clothes for just 2 days. 3 days and 2 nights, I corrected her. Yep, she nodded, smiling. 3 days and 2 nights. She zipped up the duffel bag and picked it up. Not too heavy. Try it. I picked up the bag. Fine, I shrugged. She sat on the bed. Hey, what happened to your Empire Strikes Back poster? Oh, I took that down ages ago, I answered. She shook her head. I didn't notice that before. I'm trying to, change my image a bit, I explained. Okay, she smiled, nodding like she understood. Anyway, honey, you have to promise me you won't forget to put on the bug spray, okay? On the legs, especially when you're hiking through the woods. It's right here in the front compartment. Uh-huh. And put on your sunscreen, she said. You don't want to get sunburned, and I repeat, do not forget to take your hearing aids off if you go swimming. Would I get electrocuted? No, but you'd be in real hot water with Daddy because those things cost a fortune, she laughed. I put the rain poncho in the front compartment too. Same thing goes if it rains, Augie, okay? Make sure you cover the hearing aids with the hood. Aye, aye, sir, I said, saluting. She smiled and pulled me over. I can't believe how much you've grown up this year, Augie, she said softly, putting her hands on the sides of my face. Do I look taller? Definitely, she nodded. I'm still the shortest one in my grade. I'm not really even talking about your height, she said. Suppose I hate it there. You're going to have a great time, Augie. I nodded. She got up and gave me a quick kiss on the forehead. Okay, so I say we get to bed now. It's only 9 o'clock, Mom. Your bus leaves at 6 a.m. tomorrow. You don't want to be late. Come on, chop chop. Your teeth are brushed. Your teeth your teeth are brushed? I nodded and climbed into bed. She started to lie down next to me. You don't need to put me to bed tonight, Mom, I said. I'll read on my own till I get sleepy. Really? She nodded, impressed. She squeezed my hand and gave it a kiss. Okay then, good night, love. Have sweet dreams. You too. She turned on the little reading light beside the bed. I'll write you letters, I said as she was leaving, even though I'll probably be home before you guys even get them. Then we can read them together, she said, and threw me a kiss. When she left my room, I took my copy of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe off the night table and started reading until I fell asleep. Though the witch knew the deep magic, there is a magic deeper still which she did not know. Her knowledge goes back only to the dawn of time. But if she could have looked a little further back into the stillness and the darkness before the time dawned, she would have read there a different incantation. Daybreak. The next day I woke up really early. It was still dark inside my room and even darker outside, though I knew it would be morning soon. I turned over on my side, but I didn't feel at all sleepy. And that's when I saw Daisy sitting near my bed. I mean, I knew it wasn't Daisy, but for a second I saw a shadow that looked just like her. I didn't think it was a dream then, but now looking back, I know it must have been. It didn't make me sad to see her at all. It just filled me up with nice feelings inside. She was gone after a second, and I couldn't see her again in the darkness. The room slowly started lightening, and I reached for my hearing aid headband and put it on, and now the world was really awake. I could hear the garbage trucks clunking down the street and the birds in our backyard. And down the hallway, I heard Mom's alarm beeping. Daisy's ghost made me feel super strong inside, knowing wherever I am, she'd be there with me. I got up out of bed and went to my desk and wrote a little note to Mom. Then I went into the living room where my packed bag was by the door. I opened it up and fished inside until I found what I was looking for. I took Babu back to my room and I laid him in my bed and taped the little note to Mom on his chest. And then I covered him with my blanket so Mom would find him later. The note read, Dear Mom, I won't need Babu, but if you miss me, you can cuddle with him yourself. XO Augie. Day 1. The bus ride went really fast. I sat by the window and Jack was next to me in the aisle seat. Summer and Maya were in front of us. Everyone was in a good mood. Kind of loud, laughing out loud. I noticed right away that Julian wasn't on our bus, even though Henry and Miles were. I figured he must be on the other bus, but then I overheard Miles tell Amos that Julian stitched a great trip because he thought the whole nature retreat was quote unquote dorky. I got totally pumped because dealing with Julian for 3 days in a row, excuse me, and 2 nights was a major reason that I was nervous about the whole trip. So now without him there, I got really just relaxed and not worry about anything. We got to the nature reserve around noon. The first thing we did was put our stuff down in the cabins. There were 3 bunk beds to every room. So me and Jack did rock, paper, scissors for the tunk bunk, and I won. Woohoo! And the other guys in the room were Reed, Tristan, and Pablo and Nino. After we had lunch in the main cabin, we all went on a 2-hour guided nature hike through the woods, but these were not woods like the kind they have in Central Park. These were real woods, giant trees that almost totally blocked out the sunlight, tangles of leaves and fallen tree trunks, howls and chirps and really loud bird calls. There was a slight fog too, like a pale blue smoke all around us. So cool. The nature guide pointed everything out to us, the different types of trees we were passing, the insects inside the dead logs on the trail, the signs of deer and bears in the woods, what type of birds were whistling, and where to look for them. I realized that my low bought hearing aids actually made me hear better than most people because I was usually the first person to hear a new bird call. It started to rain when we headed back to camp. I pulled on my rain poncho and pulled the hood up so my hearing aids wouldn't get wet. But my jeans and shoes got soaked by the time we reached our cabins. Everyone got soaked. It was fun though. We had a wet sock fight in the cabin. Since it rained for the rest of the day, we spent most of the afternoon goofing off in the rec room. They had ping pong table, old style arcade games like Pac-Man, Missile Command that we played until dinner time. Luckily by then it had stopped raining, so we got to have a real campfire cookout. The log benches around the campfire were still a little damp, but we threw our jackets over them and hung out by the fire, toasting s'mores and eating the best roasted hot dogs I've ever tasted. Mom was right about the mosquitoes. There were tons of them. But luckily I had spritzed myself before I left the cabin, and I wasn't eaten alive like some of the other kids were. I loved hanging out by the campfire after dark. I loved the way bits of fire dust would float up and disappear into the night air, and how the fire lit up people's faces. I loved the sound the fire made too, and how the woods were so dark that you couldn't see anything around you, and you'd look up and see a billion stars in the sky. The sky doesn't look like that in North River Heights. I've seen it look like that in Montauk, though, like someone sprinkled salt on a shiny black table. I was so tired when I got back to the cabin that I didn't need to pull out the book to read. I fell asleep almost as fast as my head hit the pillow, and maybe I dreamt about the stars. I don't know. The fairgrounds. The next day was just as great as the first day. We went horseback riding in the morning, and in the afternoon we rappelled up some ginormous trees with the help of the nature guides. By the time we got back to the cabins for dinner, we were all really tired again. After dinner, they told us we had an hour to rest, and then we were going to take a 15-minute bus ride to the fairgrounds for an outdoor movie night. I hadn't had the chance to write a letter to Mom and Dad and Via yet, so I wrote one telling them all the stuff we did the day before. I pictured myself reading it to them out loud when I got back, since there was just no way the letter would get home before I did. When we got to the fairgrounds, the sun was just starting to set. It was about 7:30. The shadows were really long on the grass, and the clouds were pink and orange. It looked like someone had taken a sidewalk chalk and smudged the colors across the sky with their fingers. It's not that I haven't seen nice sunsets before in the city, because I have. Slivers of sunsets between buildings, but I wasn't used to seeing so much sky in every direction. Out here in the fairgrounds, I could understand why ancient people used to think the world was flat and the sky was a dome that closed on top of it. That's what it looked like from the fairgrounds in the middle of the huge open field. Because we were the first school to arrive, we got to run around the field all we wanted until the teachers told us that it was time to lay out our sleeping bags on the ground and get good viewing seats. We unzipped our bags and laid them down like picnic blankets on the grass in front of the giant movie screen in the middle of the field. Then we went to the row of food trucks parked on the edge of the field to load up on snacks and sodas and stuff like that. There were concession stands there too, like at farmers markets, selling roasted peanuts and cotton candy. And up a little further was a short row of carnival type stalls, the kind where you could find a stuffed animal if you throw a baseball into a basket. Jack and I both tried and failed to win anything, but we heard Amos won a yellow hippo and gave it to Ximena. That was the big gossip that went around, the jock and the brainiac. From the food trucks, you could see the corn stalks in the back of the movie screen. They were covered about 1/3 of the field. The rest of the field was completely surrounded by woods, and as the sun sank lower in the sky, the tall trees at the entrance to the woods looked dark blue. By the time the other school buses pulled into the parking lot, we were back in the spots of the sleeping bags, right smack in front of the screen, the best seats in the whole field. Everyone was passing around snacks and having a great time. Me and Jack and Summer and Reed and Maya played Pictionary. We could hear the sounds of the other schools arriving, the loud laughing and the talking of kids coming out of the fields on both sides of us, but we couldn't really see them. Though the sky was still light, the sun had got down completely and everyone in the ground had turned deep purple. The clouds were shadows now, and we had trouble even seeing the Pictionary cards in front of us. Just then, without an announcement, all the lights at the end of the fields went on at once. They were like bright stadium lights. I thought of the scene of the Close Encounters when the alien ship lands and they're playing that music. Do da do da do. Everyone in the field started applauding and cheering like something great had just happened. Be kind to nature. An announcement came over the huge speakers next to the stadium lights. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the 23rd annual Big Movie Night at the Browerwood Nature Reserve. Welcome teachers and students from MS342, the William Heath School. A big cheer went up on the left side of the field. Welcome teachers and students from Glover Academy. Another cheer went up, this time from the right side of the field. And welcome teachers and students from the Beecher Prep School. Our whole group cheered as loudly as we could. We're thrilled to have you as our guest here tonight and thrilled that the weather is cooperating. In fact, can you believe what a beautiful night it is? Again, everyone whooped and hollered. So as we prepare the movie, we do ask that you take a few moments to listen to this important announcement. The Browerwood Nature Reserve, as you know, is dedicated to preserving our natural resources and the environment. We ask that you leave no litter behind, clean up after yourselves, be kind to nature, and it will be kind to you. We ask that you keep that in mind as you walk around the grounds. Do not venture beyond the orange cones at the edges of the playground of the fairground. Do not go into the cornfields or the woods. Please keep the free roaming to a minimum. Even if you don't feel like watching the movie, your fellow students may feel otherwise, so please be courteous. No talking, no playing music, and no running around. The restrooms are located on the other side of the concession stands after the movie is over. It will be quite dark, so we ask that all of you stay with your schools and make sure your way back as you make your way back to your buses. Teachers, there's usually at least one lost party on Big Movie Night on Browerwood. Don't let it happen to you. Tonight's movie presentation will be The Sound of Music. I immediately started clapping, even though I'd seen it a few times before, because it was Via's favorite movie of all time. But I was surprised that a whole bunch of kids, not from Beecher, booed and hissed and laughed. Someone from the right side of the field even threw a soda can at the screen, which seemed to surprise Mr. Tushman. I saw him stand up and look in the direction of the can thrower. However, I know he couldn't see any in the dark. The movie started playing right away. The stadium lights dimmed. Maria, the nun, was standing at the top of the mountain, twirling around and around. It had gotten chilly all of a sudden, and so I put on my yellow Montauk hoodie and adjusted the volume on my hearing aids and leaned against my backpack and started watching. The hills are alive. The woods are alive. Somewhere around the boring part where the guy named Rolf and the older daughter are singing You're 16 going on 17, Jack nudged me. Dude, I gotta pee, he said. We both got up and kind of hopscotched over the kids who were sitting or lying down in the sleeping bags. Summer waved as we passed and I waved back. There were a lot of kids from other schools walking around by the food trucks, playing the carnival games, or just hanging out. Of course, there was a huge line for the toilets. Forget this, I'll just have to find a tree, said Jack. That's gross, Jack. Let's just wait, I answered. But he headed off the row of trees at the edge of the field, which was past the orange cones that we were specifically told not to go past. And of course I followed him, and of course we didn't have our flashlights because we forgot to bring them. And it was so dark now that we literally couldn't see 10 steps ahead of us, and as we walked toward the woods, luckily the movie gave off some light, so when we saw a flashlight coming towards us out in the woods, we knew immediately that it was Henry, Miles, and Amos. I guess they hadn't wanted to wait in line to use the toilets either. Miles and Henry were still not talking to Jack, but Amos had let go of the war a while ago, and he nodded hello to us as they passed by. Be careful of the bears, shouted Henry, and he and Miles laughed as they walked away. Amos shook his head at us like, don't pay attention to them. Jack and I walked a little further until we were just inside the woods. Then Jack hunted around for the perfect tree and finally did his business. though it felt like he was taking forever. The woods were loud with strange sounds and chirps and croaks like a wall of noise coming out of the trees. Then we started hearing loud snaps from not far from us, almost like a cap gun pop that definitely weren't insect noises, and far away, like in another world, we could hear raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens. Ah, that's much better, said Jack, zipping up. Now I have to pee, I said, which I did on the nearest tree. No way was I going farther in like Jack did. Do you smell that? Like firecrackers, he said, coming over to me. Oh, yeah, that's what it is, I answered, sipping up. Weird. Let's go. Alien. We headed back to the we headed back the way we came in the direction of the giant screen. That's when we walked straight into a group of kids we didn't know. They just come out of the woods doing stuff I'm sure they didn't want their teachers to know about. I could smell the smoke now, the smell of both firecrackers and cigarettes. They pointed a flashlight at us. There were 6 of them, 4 boys and 2 girls. They looked like they were in 7th grade. What school are you from? One of the boys called out. Beecher Prep, Jack started to answer, when all of a sudden one of the girls started screaming. Oh my God! She shrieked, holding her hand over her eyes like she was crying. I figured maybe a huge bug had just blown into her face or something. No way! One of the boys cried out, and he started flicking his hand in the air like he just touched something hot. And then he covered his mouth. No freaking way, man! No freaking way! All of them started half laughing and half covering their eyes now, pushing each other and cursing loudly. What is that? Said the kid who was pointing the flashlight at us. And it was only then that I realized that the flashlight was pointing right at my face. And what they were talking about, screaming about, was me. Let's get out of here, Jack said to me quietly. And then he pulled me by my sweatshirt sleeve and started walking away from them. Wait, yelled the guy with the flashlight, cutting us off. He pointed the flashlight right on my face again, and now he was only about 5 feet away. Oh man, he said, shaking his head, his mouth wide open. What happened to your face? Stop it, Eddie, said one of the girls. I didn't know we were watching Lord of the Rings tonight, he said. Look, guys, it's Gollum. This made his friends hysterical. We tried to walk away from them, and again the kid named Eddie cut us off. He was at least a head taller than Jack, who was about a head taller than me, so the guy looked huge to me. No, man, it's alien, said one of the other kids. No, man, it's orc, laughed Eddie, pointing the flashlight at my face again. This time he was right in front of us. Leave him alone, okay, said Jack, pushing the hand holding the flashlight away. Make me, answered Eddie, pointing the flashlight in Jack's face now. What's your problem, dude? Said Jack. Your boyfriend's my problem. Jack, let's go, I said, pulling him by the arm. Oh, man, it talks, screamed Eddie, shining the flashlight in my face again. Then one of the other guys threw a firecracker at our feet. Jack tried to push past Eddie, but Eddie shoved his hands into Jack's shoulders and pushed him hard, which made Jack fall backwards. Eddie, screamed one of the girls. Look, I said, stepping in front of Jack and holding my hands up in the air like a traffic cop. We're a lot smaller than you guys. Are you talking to me, Freddy Krueger? I don't think you want to mess with me, you ugly freak, said Eddie. And this was the point where I knew I should run away as fast as I could, but Jack was still on the ground and I wasn't about to leave him. Yo, dude, said a new voice behind us. What's up, man? Eddie spun around and pointed his flashlight toward the voice. For a second, I couldn't believe who it was. Leave him alone, dude, said Amos, with Miles and Henry right behind him. Says who? Said one of the guys with Eddie. Just leave them alone, dude, Amos repeated calmly. Are you a freak too? Said Eddie. They're all a bunch of freaks, said one of his friends. Amos didn't answer them but looked at us. Come on, guys, let's go. Mr. Tishman's waiting for us. I knew that was a lie, but I helped Jack get up and we started walking over to Amos. Then out of the blue, the Eddie guy grabbed my hood as I passed him, yanking it really hard, so I was pulled backward and fell flat on my back. It was a hard fall and I hurt my elbow pretty bad on the rock. I couldn't really see what happened afterwards, except that Amos rammed into Eddie Guy like a monster truck, and they both fell down on the ground next to me. Everything got really crazy after that. Someone pulled me up by my sleeve and yelled, "Run," and someone else screamed, "Get him!" at the same time, and for a few seconds I actually had two people pulling the sleeves of my sweatshirt in opposite directions. I heard them both cursing until my sweatshirt ripped, and the first guy yanked me by the arm and started pulling me behind him as he ran, which I did as fast as I could. I could hear footsteps just behind us, chasing us, and voices shouting and girls screaming, but it was too dark. I didn't know whose voices they were, only that everything felt like they were underwater. We were running like crazy, and it was pitch black, and whenever I started to slow down, the guy pulling me by my arm would yell, "Don't stop!" Voices in the dark. Finally, after what seemed like forever of running, someone yelled, "I think we lost him." "Amos?" "I'm right here," said Amos' voice a few feet behind us. "We can stop?" Miles yelled from farther up. "Jack!" I yelled. "Whoa," Jack said. "I'm here. Can't see a thing." "Are you sure we lost him?" Henry asked, letting go of my arm. That's when I realized that he'd been the one who was pulling me as we ran. "Yeah." "Shh, let's listen." We all got super quiet, listening for footsteps in the dark. All we could hear were the crickets and frogs and our own crazy panting. We were out of breath, stomachs hurting, bodies bent over our knees. "We lost him," said Henry. "Whoa, that was intense. What happened to the flashlight?" "I dropped it." "How did you guys know?" said Jack. "We saw them before. They looked like jerks." "You just rammed into him," I said to Amos. "I know, right?" laughed Amos. "He didn't even see it coming," said Miles. "He was like, 'Are you a freak too?' And you were like, 'Bam,'" said Jack. "Bam," said Amos, throwing a fake punch in the air. But after I tackled him, I was like, "Run, Amos, you schmuck. He's 10 times bigger than you." And I got up and started running as fast as I could. We all started laughing. "I grabbed Augie and I was like, 'Run,'" said Henry. "I didn't even know it was you pulling me," I answered. "That was wild," said Amos, shaking his head. "Totally wild." "Your lip is bleeding, dude." "I got in a couple of good punches," answered Amos, wiping his lip. "I think they were 7th graders. They were huge." "Losers," Henry shouted really loudly, but we all shushed him. We listened for a second to make sure no one had heard him. "Where the heck are we?" said Amos. "I can't even see the screen." "I think we're in the cornfields," answered Henry. "Duh, we're in the cornfields," said Miles, pushing a corn stalk at Henry. "Okay, I know exactly where we are," said Amos. "We have to go back in this direction. That'll take us to the other side of the field." "Yo, dude," said Jack, hanging high in the air. "That was really cool of you guys to come back for us. Really cool, thanks." "No problem," answered Amos, high-fiving Jack. And then Miles and Henry high-fived him too. "Yeah, dudes, thanks," I said, holding my palm up like Jack just had, though I wasn't sure they'd high-five me too. Amos looked at me and nodded. "It was cool how you stood your ground, little dude," he said, high-fiving me. "Yeah, Augie," said Miles, high-fiving me too. "You were like, we're littler than you guys." I didn't know what else to say, I laughed. "Very cool," said Henry, and he high-fived me too. "Sorry I ripped your sweatshirt." I looked down and my sweatshirt was completely torn down in the middle. One sleeve was ripped off and the other one was so stretched out it was hanging down by my knees. "Hey, is your elbow bleeding?" said Jack. "Yeah," I shrugged. "It was just starting to hurt a lot." "You okay?" said Jack, seeing my face. I nodded. Suddenly I felt like crying, and I was really trying hard not to do that. "Wait, your hearing aids are gone," said Jack. "What?" I yelled, touching my ears. The hearing aid band was definitely gone. That's why I felt like I was underwater. "Oh no," I said. That's when I couldn't hold it anymore. Everything had just happened kind of hit me, and I couldn't help it. I started to cry, like big crying, what Mama would call the waterworks. I was so embarrassed I hid my face in my arms, but I couldn't stop the tears from coming. The guys were really nice to me, though. They patted me on the back. "You okay, dude?" "It's okay," they said. "You're one brave little dude, you know that?" said Amos, putting his arm around my shoulders. And when I kept on crying, he put his both arms around me like my dad would have done and let me cry. The Emperor's Guard. We tracked down the grass for a good 10 minutes to see if we could find my hearing aids, but it was way too dark to see anything. We literally had to hold each other's shirts and walk in a single file so we wouldn't trip over one another. It was a little black ink. It had been poured all around. "This is hopeless," said Henry. They could be anywhere. Maybe we can come back and with a flashlight, answered Amos. No, it's okay, I said. Let's just go back. Thanks, though. We walked back towards the cornfield and then cut through them until the back of the giant screen came into view. Since it was facing away from us, we didn't get any light from the screen at all until we'd walk around the edge of the woods again. That's when we finally started seeing the little light. There was no sign of the seventh graders anywhere. Where do you think they went? Said Jack. Back to the wood food trucks. They're probably thinking we're going to report them. Are we? Asked Henry. They looked at me. I shook my head. Okay, said Amos, but little dude, don't walk around here alone again, okay? If we need to go somewhere, tell us and we'll go with you. Okay, I had nodded. As we got closer to the screen, I could hear high on a hill was a lonely goatherd and could smell the cotton candy from one of the concession stands near the food trucks. There were lots of kids milling around in the area, so I pulled what was left of my hoodie over my head and kept my face down, hands in pockets, as we made our way through the crowd. It had been a long time since I'd been out without my hearing aids, and it felt like I was miles under earth. It felt like that song Miranda used to sing to me. Ground control to Major Tom. Your circuit's dead. There's something wrong. I did notice as I walked that Amos had stayed right next to me and Jack was close on the other side of me. And Miles was in front of us and Henry was in the back of us. They were surrounding me as we walked through the crowd of kids like I had my own emperor's guard. Sleep. Then they came out of the narrow valley, and at once she saw the reason. There stood Peter and Edmund, and all the rest of Aslan's army, fighting desperately against a crowd of horrible creatures whom she had seen last night, only now in the daylight. They looked even stranger and more evil and more deformed. I stopped there. I'd been reading for over an hour, and sleep still didn't come. It was almost 2 a.m. Everyone else was asleep. I had my flashlight under my sleeping bag, and maybe the light was why I couldn't sleep, but I was too afraid to turn it off. I was afraid of how dark it was outside the sleeping bag. When we got back to our section in front of the movie screen, no one had even noticed we'd been gone. Mr. Tushman and Miss Rubin and Summer and all the rest of the kids were just watching the movie. They had no clue how something had almost happened to me and Jack. It's so weird how that can be, how you could have a night that's the worst in your life, but to everybody else it's just an ordinary night. Like on my calendar at home, I would mark this as being one of the most horrific days of my life. This and the day Daisy died, but for the rest of the world, it was just an ordinary day. Or maybe it was even a good day. Maybe somebody won the lottery today. Amos, Miles, and Henry brought me and Jack over to where we'd been sitting before, with Summer and Maya and Reed, and then they went and sat where they had been sitting before, with Ximena and Savannah in their group. In a way, everything was exactly as we left it before we went looking for the toilets. The sky was the same, the movie was the same, everyone's faces were the same, mine was the same. But something was different. Something had changed. I could see Amos and Miles and Henry telling their group what had just happened. I knew they were talking about it because they kept looking over at me while they were talking. And even though the movie was still playing, people were whispering about it in the dark. News like that spreads fast. It was like what everyone was talking about on the bus ride back to the cabins. All the girls, even the girls I didn't know very well, were asking me if I was okay. The boys were all talking about getting revenge in the group on the 7th grade jerks, trying to figure out what school they were from. I wasn't planning on telling the teachers about any of what had happened, but they found out anyway. Maybe it was the torn sweatshirt or the bloody elbow, or maybe it was just the teachers hear everything. When we got back to camp, Mr. Tushman took me to the first aid office, and while I was getting my elbow cleaned and bandaged up by the camp nurse, Mr. Tushman and the camp director were in the next room talking with Amos and Jack and Henry and Miles, trying to get the description of the troublemakers. When he asked me about them a little later, I said I couldn't remember their faces at all, which wasn't true. It's their faces I kept seeing every time I closed my eyes to sleep. They look of total horror on the girl's face. The look of total horror on the girl's face when she first saw me. The way the kid with the flashlight Eddie looked at me as he talked to me like he hated me. Like a lamb to a slaughter. I remember Dad saying that year ages ago. But tonight, I think I finally got what it meant. Aftermath. Mom was waiting for me in front of the school along with all the other parents when the bus arrived. Mr. Tushman told me on the bus ride that they had called my parents to tell them that there had been a situation the night before, but that everyone was fine. He said the camp director had several of the counselors went looking for the hearing aids in the morning while we were all went swimming in the lake, but they couldn't find it anywhere. Browerwood would reimburse us for the cost of the hearing aids, and he said they felt bad about what happened. I wondered if Eddie had taken my hearing aids with him as a kind of souvenir, something to remember the orc. Mom gave me a tight hug when I got off the bus, but she didn't slam me with questions like I thought she might. Her hug felt good, and I didn't shake it off like some of the other kids were doing with their parents' hugs. The bus driver started unloading our duffel bags, and I went to find mine while Mom talked to Mr. Tushman and Miss Rubin, who had walked over to her. As I rolled my back toward her, a lot of kids who don't usually say anything to me were nodding hello or patting my back as I walked by. Ready, Mom said when she saw me. She took my duffel bag and I didn't even try to hold on to it. I was fine with her carrying it. If she had wanted to carry me on her shoulders, I would have been fine with that too, to be truthful. As we started to walk away, Mr. Tushman gave me a quick, tight hug but didn't say anything. Home. Mom and I didn't talk much the whole walk home, and when we got to the front stoop, I automatically looked in the front bay window because I forgot for a second that Daisy wasn't going to be there, like always, perched on the sofa with her front paws on the windowsill, waiting for us to come home. It made me kind of sad when we walked inside. As soon as we did, Mom dropped my duffel bag and wrapped her arms around me and kissed my head and on my face like she was breathing me in. It's okay, Mom, I'm fine, I said, smiling. She nodded and took my face in her hands. Her eyes were shiny. I know you are, she said. I missed you so much, Augie. I missed you too. I could tell she wanted to say a lot of things, but she was stopping herself. Are you hungry? She asked. Starving. Can I get grilled cheese? Of course, she answered, and immediately started to make the sandwich. Well, I took my jacket off and sat at the kitchen counter. Where's Via? I asked. She's coming home with Dad today. Boy, did she miss you, Augie, Mom said. Yeah, she would have liked the nature reserve. You know that movie they played? The Sound of Music. You'll have to tell her that. So, do you want to hear about the bad part or the good part first? I asked after a few minutes, leaning my head on my hand. Whatever you want to talk about, she answered. Well, except for last night, I had an awesome time, I said. I mean, it was just awesome. That's why I'm so bummed. I feel like they ruined the whole trip for me. No, sweetie, don't let them do that to you. You were there for more than 48 hours, and that awful part only lasted 1 hour. Don't let them take that away from you, okay? I know, I nodded. Did Mr. Tishman tell you about the hearing aids? Yeah, he called us this morning. Was Dad mad because they're so expensive? Oh my gosh, of course not, Augie. He just wanted to know that you were all right. That's all that matters to us. And then you don't let those thugs ruin your trip. I kind of laughed the way she said the word thugs. What? She asked. What? She asked. Thugs? I teased her. That's kind of an old-fashioned word. Okay, jerks, morons, imbeciles, she said, flipping over the sandwich in a pan. Cretinos, as my mother would have said. Whatever you want to call them. If I saw them on the street, I would. She shook her head. They were pretty big, Mom. I smiled. 7th graders, I think. She shook her head. 7th graders? Mr. Tushman didn't tell us that. Oh, my goodness. Did he tell you how Jack stood up for me and how Amos was like, bam, he ran right into the leader? They both crashed to the ground like it was a real fight. It was pretty awesome. Amos' lip was bleeding and everything. He told us there was a fight, but, she said, looking at me with her eyebrows raised, I'm just so grateful you and Amos and Jack are fine. When I think of what could have happened, she trailed off, flipping the grilled cheese again. My Montauk hoodie got totally shredded. Well, that can be replaced, she said. She lifted the grilled cheese onto the plate and put the plate in front of me on the counter. Milk or white grape juice? Chocolate milk, please. I started devouring the sandwich. Oh, can you do it in that special way you make it with the froth? How did you and Jack end up at the edge of the woods in the first place? She said, pouring the milk into the glass. Jack had to go to the bathroom, I answered, my mouth full. And as I was talking, she spooned the chocolate powder in and started rolling a small whisk between her palms really fast. But there was a huge line and and he didn't want to wait, so we went towards the woods to pee. She looked up at me while she was whisking. I know she was thinking we shouldn't have done that. The chocolate milk in the glass was now 2-inch froth on top. That looks good, Mom, thanks. And then what happened? She said, putting the glass in front of me. I took a long drink of the chocolate milk. Is it okay if we don't talk about it anymore right now? Oh, okay. I promise I'll tell you about it later when Dad and Via come home. I'll tell you every detail. I just don't want to have to tell the story over and over, you know? Absolutely. I finished my sandwich in 2 more bites and gulped down the chocolate milk. Wow, you practically inhaled that sandwich. Do you want another one? She said. I shook my head and wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. Mom, am I always going to have to worry about jerks like that? I asked. Like when I grow up, is it always going to be like this? She didn't answer right away, but took my plate and glass and put them in the sink and rinsed them with water. There are always going to be jerks in the world, Augie, she said, looking at me. But I really believe, and Daddy really believes, that there are more good people on this earth than bad people, and the good people watch out for each other and take care of each other, just like Jack was there for you, and Amos, and the other kids. Oh yeah, Miles and Henry, I answered. They were awesome too. It's weird because Miles and Henry hadn't even really been nice to me at all during the year. Sometimes people surprise us, she said, rubbing the top of my head. I guess. Want another glass of chocolate milk? No, I'm good, I said. Thanks, Mom. Actually, I'm kind of tired. I didn't sleep too good last night. You should take a nap. Thanks for leaving me Babu, by the way. You got my note? She smiled. I slept with him both nights. She was about to say something else when her cell phone rang, and she answered. She started beaming as she listened. Oh, my goodness. Really? What kind? She said excitedly. Yeah, he's right here. He was about to take a nap. Want to say hi? Oh, okay. See you in 2 minutes. She clicked off. That was Daddy, she said excitedly. He and Via are just down the block. He's not at work, I said. He left early because he couldn't wait to see you, she said. So don't take a nap quite yet. 5 seconds later, Dad and Via came through the door. I ran into Dad's arms and he picked me up and spun me around and kissed me. He didn't let me go for a full minute until I said, Dad, it's okay. And then it was Via's turn and she kissed me all over like she used to when I was little. It wasn't until she stopped that I noticed the big white cardboard box she had brought in with them. What's that? I said. Open it, said Dad, smiling at me. Smiling, and he and Mom looked at each other like they knew a secret. Come on, Augie, said Via. I opened the box. Inside was the cutest little puppy I've ever seen in my life. It was black and furry, with a pointy little snout and bright black eyes and small ears that flopped down. Bear. We called the puppy Bear because when Mom first saw him, she said he looked just like a little bear cub. I said that's what we should call him, and everyone agreed that was the perfect name. I took the next day off from school, not because my elbow was hurting me, which it was, but so I could play with Bear all day long. Mom let Via stay home from school too, so the two of us took turns cuddling with Bear and playing tug of war with him. We had kept all of Daisy's old toys and we brought them out now to see which ones he'd like the best. It was fun hanging out with Via all day, just the two of us. It was like old times, like before I started going to school. Back then I could wait for her to come home from school so that she could play with me before starting her homework. Now that we're older though, I'm going to school and I have friends of my own and I hang out with. We never do that anymore. So it was nice hanging out with her, laughing and playing. I think she liked it too. The shift. When I went back to school the next day, the first thing I noticed was that there was a big shift in the way things were. A monumental shift, a seismic shift, maybe even cosmic shift. Whatever you want to call it, it was a big shift. Everyone, not just our grade, but every grade had heard about what happened to us in the 7th graders, with the 7th graders. So suddenly I wasn't known for what I'd always been known for, but for this other thing that had happened. And the story of what happened had gotten bigger and bigger each time it was told. 2 days later, the way the story went was that Amos had gotten into a major fist fight with a kid, and Miles and Henry and Jack had thrown some punches at the other guys too, and the escape across the field became this whole adventure through the cornfield maze and into a deep dark woods. Jack's version of the story was probably the best because he's so funny, but in whatever version of the story there were, no matter who was telling it, two things always stayed the same. I got picked on because of my face, and Jack defended me, and those guys, Amos, Henry, and Miles, protected me. And now that they'd protected me, I was different to them. I was like I was one of them. They all called me little dude now, even the jocks. These big dudes I barely even knew before would knuckle punch me in the hallways now. Another thing to come out of it was that Amos became super popular, and Julian, just because he missed the whole thing, was really out of the loop. Miles and Henry were hanging out with Amos all the time now, like they switched best friends. I'd like to be able to say that Julian started treating me better, but that wouldn't be true. He still gave me dirty looks across the room, and he still never talked to me or Jack, but he was the only one who was like that now, and me and Jack, we could care less. Ducks. The day before the last day of school, Mr. Tushman called me into his office to tell me they had found out names of the seventh graders from the nature retreat. He read off a bunch of names that didn't mean anything to me, and then he said the last name, Edward Johnson. I nodded. You recognize the name, he said. They call him Eddie. Right, well, they found this in Edward's locker. He handed me what was left of my hearing aid band. The right piece was completely gone, and the left one was mangled. The band that connected the lobe part was bent down the middle. His school wants to know if you want to press charges, said Mr. Tushman. I looked at my hearing aids. No, I don't think so. I shrugged. I'm being fitted for new ones anyway. Why don't you talk about it with your parents tonight? I'll call your mom tomorrow to talk about it with her too. Would would they go to jail? I asked. No, not jail, but they'd probably go to juvie court and maybe they'll learn a lesson that way. Trust me, that Eddie kid is not learning any lessons, I joked. He sat down behind his desk. Augie, why don't you sit down for a second, he said. I sat down, and all the things on his desk were the same as when I first walked into his office last summer. The same mirrored cube, the same little globe floating in the air. That felt like ages ago. Hard to believe this year's almost over, huh? He said, almost like he was reading my mind. Yeah. Has it been a good year for you, Augie? Has it been okay? Yeah, it's been good, I nodded. I know academically it's been a great year for you. You're one of our top students. Congrats on the high honor roll. Thanks, yeah, that's cool. But I know it's had its share of ups and downs, he said, raising his eyebrows. Certainly that night at the nature resort was one of the low points. Yeah, I nodded, but it was also kind of good too. In what way? Well, you know how people stood up for me and stuff? That was pretty wonderful, he said, smiling. Yeah, I know in school things got a little hairy with Julian at times. I have to admit, he surprised me with that one. You know about that stuff, I asked him. Middle school directors have a way of knowing about a lot of stuff. Do you have like secret security cameras in the hallways, I joked. And microphones everywhere, he laughed. No, seriously? He laughed again. No, not seriously. Oh, but teachers know more than kids think, Augie. I wish you and Jack had come to me about the mean notes that were left in your lockers. How do you know about that? I said. I'm telling you, middle school directors know all. It wasn't that big a deal, I answered, and we wrote notes too. He smiled. I don't know if it's public yet, he said, though it will soon be, but Julian Albans is not coming back to Beecher Prep next year. What? I said. Honestly, I couldn't hide how surprised I was. His parents don't think the Beecher Prep is a good fit for him, Mr. Tushman continued, raising his shoulders. Wow, that's big news, I said. Yeah, I thought you should know. Then suddenly I saw the pumpkin portrait that used to be behind his desk was gone, and my drawing myself portrait as an animal that I drew for the New Year art show was now framed and hanging behind his desk. Hey, that's mine, I pointed. Mr. Tushman turned around like he didn't know what I was talking about. Oh, that's right, he said, tapping his forehead. I've been meaning to show this to you for months now. My self-portrait as a duck, I nodded. I love this piece, Augie, he said. When your art teacher showed it to me, I asked her if I could keep it in my wall. I hope that's okay with you. Oh, yeah, sure. What happened to the pumpkin portrait? Right behind you. Oh, yeah, nice. I've been meaning to ask you since I hung this up, he said, looking at it. Why did you choose to represent yourself as a duck? What do you mean, I answered. That was the assignment. Yeah, but why a duck? It's safe to assume that it was because of the story of the ugly duckling that turns into a swan? No, I laughed, shaking my head. It's because I think I look like a duck. Oh, said Mr. Tushman, his eyes opening wide. He started laughing. Really, huh? Here I am looking for symbolism and metaphors, and sometimes a duck is just a duck. Yeah, I guess, I said. Not quite getting why he thought that was so funny, he laughed to himself for a good 30 seconds. Anyway, Augie, thanks for chatting with me, he said. Finally, I just want you to know it's truly a pleasure having you here at Beecher Prep, and I'm really looking forward to next year. He reached across the desk and we shook hands. See you tomorrow at graduation. See you tomorrow, Mr. Tushman. The last precept. This was written on Mr. Brown's chalkboard when we walked into English class for the last time. Mr. Brown's June precept. Just follow the day and reach for the sun. The polyphonic spree. Have a great summer vacation, Class B. It's been a great year and you've been a wonderful group of students. If you remember, please send me a postcard this summer with your personal precept. It can be something you made up yourself or something you heard somewhere that means something to you. If so, don't forget to attribution, please. I really look forward to getting them. Tom Brown, 563 Sebastian Place, Bronx, New York, 153. The drop-off. The graduation ceremony was held at the Beecher Prep Upper School Auditorium. It was only about a 15-minute walk from our house to the other campus building, but Dad drove me because I was all dressed up and had on new shiny black shoes that weren't broken in yet, and I didn't want my feet to hurt. Students were supposed to arrive at the auditorium an hour before the ceremony started, but we got there even earlier, so we sat in the car and waited. Dad turned on the CD player, and our favorite song came on. We both smiled and started bobbing our heads to music. Dad sang along with the song, Andy would bicycle across town with the rain to bring you candy. Hey, is my tie on straight? I said. He looked and straightened it in a tiny bit as he kept on singing, and John would buy the gown for you to wear to the prom. Does my hair look okay? I said. He smiled and nodded. Perfect, he said. You look great, Augie. Via put some gel in it this morning, I said, pulling it down the sun visor and looking in the little mirror. It doesn't look too puffy. No, it's very cool, Augie. I don't think you've ever had this short before, have you? No, I got it cut yesterday. I think it makes me look more grown up, don't you? Definitely, he said, smiling, looking at me and nodding. But I'm the luckiest guy on the Lower East Side, 'cause I got wheels and you want to go for a ride. Look at you, Augie, he said, smiling from ear to ear. Look at you, looking all grown up and spiffy. I can't believe you're graduating from the 5th grade. I know, it's pretty awesome, right? Right, I nodded. It feels like yesterday that you started. Remember, I still had that Star Wars braid hanging from the back of my head. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's right, he said, rubbing his palms over his forehead. You hated that braid, didn't you, Dad? Hate is too strong a word, but definitely didn't love it. You hated it. Come on, admit it, I teased. No, I didn't hate it. He smiled, shaking his head. But I will admit to hating that astronaut helmet you used to wear. You remember? The one Miranda gave me? Of course I remember. I used to wear that thing all the time. Good God, I hated that thing. He laughed, almost more to himself. I was so bummed when I lost it, I said. Oh, it didn't get lost, he answered casually. I threw it out. Wait, what? I said. I honestly didn't think I heard him right. The day is beautiful, and so are you, he was singing. Dad, I said, turning the volume down. What? He said. You threw it out? He finally looked at my face and saw how mad I was. I couldn't believe he was being so matter of fact about the whole thing. I mean, to me, this was a major revelation, and he was acting like it was no big deal. Augie, I couldn't stand seeing that thing cover your face anymore, he said clumsily. Dad, I love that helmet. It meant a lot to me. I was bummed beyond belief when I lost it. Don't you remember? Of course I remember, Augie, he said softly. Oh, Augie, don't be mad. I'm sorry. I just couldn't stand seeing you wear that thing on your head anymore, you know? I didn't think it was good for you. He was trying to look at me in the eye, but I couldn't look at him. Come on, Augie, please try to understand, he continued, putting his hand under his chin and tilting my face toward him. You were wearing that helmet all the time, and the real truth is I miss seeing your face, Augie. I know you don't always love it, but you have to understand I love it. I love this face of yours, Augie, completely and passionately, and it's kind of broke my heart that you were always covering it up. He was squinting at me like he really wanted me to understand. Does Mom know? I said. He opened his eyes wide. No way, are you kidding me? She would have killed me. She tore the place apart looking for that helmet, Dad. I said, I mean, she spent like a week looking for it in every closet, in the laundry room, everywhere. I know, he said, nodding. That's why she'd kill me. And then she looked at me and something about and then he looked at me and something about his expression made me start laughing, which made him open his mouth wide like he just realized something. Wait a minute, Augie, he said, pointing his finger at me. You have to promise me you'll never tell Mommy anything about this. I smiled and rubbed my hands together like I was about to get very greedy. Let's see, I said, stroking my chin. I'll be wanting that new Xbox when it comes out next month, and I'll definitely be wanting my own car in about 6 years. A red Porsche would be nice, and he started laughing. I love it when I'm the one who makes Dad laugh, since he's usually the funny man that gets everyone else laughing. Oh boy, he said, shaking his head. You really have grown up. That part of the song we love to sing the most started to play, and I turned up the volume. We both started singing. I'm the ugliest guy on the Lower East Side, but I got wheels and you want to go for a ride. Want to go for a ride, want to go for a ride, want to go for a ride. We always sang that last part at the top of our lungs, trying to hold that last note as long as the guy who sang the song, which always made us crack up. While we were laughing, we noticed Jack had arrived and was walking over to our car. I started to get out. Hold on, said Dad. I just want to make sure you've forgiven me, okay? Yes, I forgive you. He looked at me gratefully. Thank you. Don't ever throw anything else of mine out again without telling me. I promise. I opened the door and got out just as Jack reached the car. Hey, Jack, I said. Hey, Augie. Hey, Mr. Pullman, said Jack. How you doing, Jack, said Dad. See you later, Dad, I said, closing the door. Good luck, guys, Dad called, rolling down the front window. See you on the other side of 5th grade. We waved as he turned on the ignition and started to pull away, but then I ran over and he stopped the car. I put my head in the window so Jack couldn't hear what I was saying. Can you guys not kiss me a lot after graduation? I asked quietly. It's kind of embarrassing. I'll try my best. Tell Mom too. I don't think she'll be able to resist, Augie, but I'll pass it along. Bye, dear old Dad. He smiled. Bye, my son, my son. Take your seats, everyone. Jack and I walked right behind a couple of 6th graders into the building and then followed them to the auditorium. Mrs. G was at the entrance handing out the programs and telling the kids where to go. 5th graders down the aisle to the left, 6th graders go to the right. Everyone come in, good morning, go to your staging areas. 5th graders to the left, 6th grade to the right. The auditorium was huge inside, big sparkly chandeliers, red velvet walls, rows and rows and rows of cushioned seats leading up to the giant stage. We walked down the wide aisle and followed the signs of the 5th grade staging area, which was in the big room to the left of the stage. Inside were 4 rows of folding chairs facing the front of the room, which was there where Miss Rubin was standing, waving us in soon as we walked in the room. Okay, kids, take your seats, she was saying, pointing to the rows of the chair. Don't forget you're sitting alphabetically. Come on, everybody, take your seats. Not too many kids have arrived yet, though, and the ones who had weren't listening to her. Me and Jack were sword fighting with our rolled up programs. Hey, guys. It was Summer walking over to us. She was wearing a light pink dress and I think a little makeup. Wow, Summer, you look awesome, I told her, because she really did. Really? Thanks. You did too, Augie. Yeah, you look okay, Summer, said Jack, kind of matter of fact, and for the first time, I realized that Jack had a crush on her. This is so exciting, isn't it, said Summer. Yeah, kind of, I answered, nodding. Oh man, look at this program, said Jack, scratching his forehead. We're going to be here all freaking day. I looked at my program. Headmaster opening remarks, Dr. Harold Jansen. Middle school director's address, Mr. Lawrence Tushman. Light and day, middle school choir. 5th grade student commencement address, Ximena Chen. Pachelbel, Canon and D, middle school chamber music ensemble. 6th grade student commencement address, Mark Antoniak. Under pressure, middle school choir. Middle school dean's address, Miss Jennifer Rubin. Awards presentation, see back. Roll call of names. Why do you think that? I asked. Because Mr. Jansen's speeches go on forever, said Jack. He's even worse than Mr. Tushman. My mom said she actually dozed off when he spoke last year, Summer added. Was that the awards presentation? I asked. That's when they give medals to the biggest brainiacs, Jack answered, which would mean Charlotte and Ximena will win everything in the fifth grade, just like Charlotte won everything in the fourth grade and the third grade. Not in the second grade, I laughed. They didn't give those awards in the second grade, he answered. Maybe you'll win this year, I joked. Not unless they give awards for the most C's, he laughed. Everyone take your seats. Mrs. Rubin started yelling louder now. She was getting annoyed that that nobody was listening. We have a lot to get through, so take your seats. Don't forget you're sitting in alphabetical order, A through G in the first row, H through N in the second row, O through K in the third row, and R through Z in the last row. Let's go, people. We should go sit down, said Summer, walking toward the front section. You guys are definitely coming over to my house after this, right? I called out after her. Definitely, she said, taking her seat next to Ximena Chen. When did summer get so hot? Jack muttered in my ear. Shut up, dude, I said, laughing as we headed toward the third row. Seriously, when did that happen? He whispered, taking the seat next to mine. Mr. Will, Mr. Rubin shouted. Last time I checked, W came between R and Z. Yes? Jad looked at her blankly. Dude, you're in the wrong row, I said. I am? In the face he made as he got up to leave, which was a mixture of looking completely confused and looking like he just played a joke on someone, totally cracked me up. A simple thing. About an hour later, we all were seated in the giant auditorium, waiting for Mr. Tushman to give his middle school address. The auditorium was even bigger than I imagined it would be, bigger than the one at VS School. I looked around and there must have been 1,000,000 people in the audience. Okay, maybe not 1,000,000, but definitely a lot. Thank you, Headmaster Jansen, for the very kind words of introduction, said Mr. Tushman, standing behind the podium on the stage as he walked into the microphone. Welcome, my fellow teachers and members of the faculty. Welcome, parents and grandparents, friends and honored guests, and most especially, welcome to my 5th and 6th grade students. Welcome to the Beecher Prep Middle School graduation ceremonies. Everyone applauded. Every year, continued Mr. Tushman, reading from his notes with his reading glasses way down at the tip of his nose, I am charged with writing 2 commencement addresses, one for 5th and 6th grade graduation ceremonies today, and one for the 7th and 8th grade ceremony that will take place tomorrow. And every year I say to myself, let me cut down on my work and write down one address so that I can use for both situations. Seems like it shouldn't be such a hard thing to do, right? And yet each year I still end up with 2 different speeches, no matter what my intentions, and I finally figured out why this year. It's not as you might assume simply because tomorrow I'll be taking it on an older crowd with middle school experience that is largely behind them, whereas your middle school experience is largely in front of you. No, I think it has more to do with the particular age that you are right now. This particular moment in your lives that even after 20 years of me being around students this age still moves me. Because you're at the cusp, kids. You're at the edge of between childhood and everything that comes after. You're in transition. We are all gathered here together, Mr. Tushman continued, taking off his glasses and using them to point at all of us in the audience. All of your families, friends, and teachers do celebrate not only your achievements of this past year, Beecher Middle Schoolers, but your endless possibilities. When you reflect on this year, I want you all to look at where you are now and where you've been. You all gotten a little taller, a little stronger, a little smarter, I hope. Here, some people in the audience chuckled. But the best way to measure how much you've grown isn't by inches or numbers or laps you can now run around the track or even your grade point average. Though those things are important to be sure, it's what you've done with your time, how you've chosen to spend your days, and whom you have touched this year. That to me is the greatest measure of success. There's a wonderful line in a book by M.J. Barrie, and no, it's not Peter Pan, and I'm not going to ask you to clap if you believe in fairies. Here, everyone laughed again. But in another book by J.M. Barrie called The Little White Bird, he writes, he started flipping through the small book at the podium until he found the page he was looking for, and then he put on his reading glasses. Shall we make a new rule of life? Always try to be a little kinder than necessary? Here, Mr. Tushman looked up at the audience. Kinder than is necessary, he repeated. What a marvelous line, isn't it? kinder than is necessary, because it's not enough to be kind. Only should be kinder than needed. Why I love that line, that concept, is that it reminds me that we carry with us as human beings not just the capacity to be kind, but the very choice of kindness. And what does that mean? How is it measured? You can't use a yardstick. It's like I was saying just before, it's not like measuring how much you've grown in a year. It's not exactly quantifiable, is it? How do we know we've been kind? What is being kind anyway? He put on his reading glasses again and started flipping through another small book. There's another passage in a different book I'd like to share with you. He said, if you bear with me while I find it. Here we go. It's Under Eye of the Clock by Christopher Nolan. The main character is a young man who's facing some extraordinary challenges, and there's this one part where someone helps him, a kid in his class. And on the surface, it's a small gesture, but to this young man, whose name is Joseph, it's, well, if you permit me. He cleared his throat and read from the book. It was at moments such as these that Joseph recognized the face of God in human form. It glimmered in the kindness to him. It glowed in their keenness. It hinted in their caring indeed, and indeed it caressed in their gaze. He paused and took off his reading glasses again. It glimmered in the kindness to him, he repeated, smiling. Such a simple thing, kindness, such a simple thing, a nice word of encouragement given when needed, an act of friendship, a passing smile. He closed the book, put it down, and leaned forward on the podium. Children, what I want to impart to you today is an understanding of the value of that simple thing called kindness. And that all I want to leave you with today, I know I'm kind of infamous for my verbosity. Here, everyone laughed again. I guess he knew he was known for his long speeches. But I want you, my students, to take away from your middle school experience, he continued, is the sure knowledge that in the future you make for yourselves anything possible. And every single person in the room made it a rule that whenever you are, whenever you can, you will try to act a little kinder than is necessary. The world really would be a better place. And if you do this, if you act just a little kinder than it is necessary, someone else somewhere someday may recognize in you and every single one of you the face of God. He paused and shrugged. Or whatever politically correct spiritual representation of universe goodness you happen to believe in, he added quickly, smiling, which got a lot of laughs and loads of applause, especially from the back of the auditorium where the parents were sitting. Awards. I liked Mr. Tushman's speech, but I have to admit I kind of zoned out a little during some of the other speeches. I tuned in again as Miss Rubin started reading off the names of the kids who'd made the high honor roll, because we were all supposed to stand up when our names were called. So I waited and listened for my name, and we went down the list alphabetically. Reed Kingsley, Maya Markowitz, August Pullman. I stood up. Then she finished reading off the names. She asked us all to face the audience and take a bow, and everyone applauded. I had no idea where in that huge crowd my parents might be sitting. All I could see were the flashes of light from people taking photos and parents waving to their kids. I pictured Mom waving at me from somewhere, even though I couldn't see her. Then Mr. Tushman came back to the podium to present the medals of academic excellence, and Jack was right. Jimena Chen won the gold medal for the overall academic excellence from 5th grade. Charlotte won the silver, and Charlotte also won the gold medal for music. Amos won the medal for overall excellence in sports, which I was really happy about, because ever since the nature retreat, I considered Amos to be like one of my best friends in school. But I was really, really thrilled when Mr. Tushman called out Summer's name for the gold medal in creative writing. I saw Summer put her hand over her mouth when her name was called, and when she walked up on the stage, I yelled, "Woohoo, Summer!" as slowly as I could, though I don't think she heard me. After the last name was called, all the kids who just won awards stood next to each other on stage, and Mr. Tushman said to the audience, "Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to present to you this year's Beecher Prep School Scholastic Achievers. Congratulations to all of you." I applauded as the kids on stage bowed. I was happy for Summer. The final award this morning, said Mr. Tushman after the kids on stage had returned to their seats, is the Henry Ward Beecher Medal to honor students who have been notable or exemplary in certain areas throughout the school year. Typically, this medal has been our way of acknowledging volunteerism or service to our school. I immediately figured Charlotte would get this medal because she organized the coat drive this year, so I kind of zoned out a bit again. I looked at my watch, 10:56. I was getting hungry for lunch already. Henry Ward Beecher was, of course, the 19th century abolitionist and a fiery sermonizer of human rights, after whom this school was named, Mr. Tushman was saying when I started paying attention again. While reading up on his life in preparation for this award, I came upon a passage that he wrote that seemed particularly consistent with the themes I touched on earlier, themes I've been ruminating upon all year. Not just the nature of kindness, but the nature of one's kindness, the power of one's friendship, the test of one's character, the strengths of one's courage. And here the weirdest thing happened. Mr. Tushman's voice cracked a bit. He got a little choked up. He actually cleared his throat and took a big sip of water. I started paying attention for real now to what he was saying. The strength of one's courage, he repeated quietly. Nodding and smiling, he held up his right hand like he was counting off. Courage, kindness, friendship, character. These are the qualities that define us as human beings and propel us on occasion to greatness. And this is what the Henry Ward Beecher Medal is about, recognizing greatness. But how do we do that? How do we measure something like greatness? Again, there's no yardstick for that kind of thing. How do we even define it? Well, Beecher actually had an answer for that. He put his reading glasses on, leafed through the book, and started to read. Greatness, wrote Beecher, lies not in being strong, but in the right use of strength. He is the greatest whose strength carries up the most hearts. And again, out of the blue, he got all choked up. He put his two index fingers over his mouth for a second before continuing. He is the greatest, he finally continued, whose strength carries up most hearts by an attraction of his own. Without further ado, this year I am proud to award the Henry Ward Beecher Medal to a student whose quiet strength has carried up the most hearts. So will August Pullman please come up to receive this award? Floating. People started applauding before Mr. Tushman's words were actually registered in my brain. I heard Maya, who was next to me, give me a little happy scream when she heard my name, and Miles, who was on the other side of me, patted my back. Stand up, get up, said kids all around me, and I felt lots of hands pushing me upward out of my seat, guiding me to the edge of the road, patting me at my back, high-fiving me. Way to go, Augie! Nice going, Augie! I even stared at hearing my name being chanted. Augie, Augie, Augie. I looked back and saw Jack leading the chant. Fist in the air, smiling and signaling for me to keep going, and Amos shouting through his hands, "Woohoo, little dude!" Then I saw Summer smiling as I walked past her row, and when she saw me look at her, she gave me a little secret, little thumbs up and mouthed her silent, cool beans to me. I laughed and shook my head like I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't believe it. I think I was smiling, maybe I was beaming, I don't know. And as I walked up the aisle toward the stage, all I saw was a blur of a happy, bright faces looking at me and hands clapping for me. And I heard people yelling things out to me. You deserve it, Augie. Good for you, Augie. I saw my teachers in their aisle seats, Mr. Brown, Miss Petosa, Miss Roche, Miss Atanabi, Miss Nurse Molly, and all the others, and they were cheering for me, woohooing and whistling. I felt like I was floating. It was so weird, like the sun was shining full force on my face and the wind was blowing. And I got closer to the stage. I saw Mrs. Rubin waving at me in the front row. And then next to her was Mrs. G, who was crying hysterically, a happy crying, smiling and clapping the whole time. And as I walked up the steps to the stage, when the most amazing thing happened, everyone started standing up. Not just the front rows, but the whole audience suddenly got up on their feet, whooping and hollering and clapping like crazy. It was a standing ovation for me. I walked across the stage to Mr. Tushman, who shook my hand with his hands and whispered in my ear, "Well done, Augie." Then he placed the gold medal over my head just like they do in the Olympics and had me turn to face the audience. I felt like I was watching myself in a movie, almost like I was someone else. I was like the last scene of the Star Wars episode 4, A New Hope, when Luke Skywalker's Han Solo and Chewbacca are being applauded for destroying the Death Star. I could almost hear the Star Wars theme music playing in my head as I stood at the stage. I wasn't even sure what I was really Well, I was getting this medal, really. Not, no, that's true. I knew why. It's like people you see sometimes and you don't can't imagine what it would be like to be that person, whether it's somebody in a wheelchair or somebody who can't talk. Only I know that I'm that person to other people, maybe to every single person in that whole auditorium. To me, though, it's just me. I'm an ordinary kid. But hey, if you want to give me a medal for being me, that's okay. I'll take it. I didn't destroy the Death Star or anything like that, but I did just get through the fifth grade, and that's not easy, even if you're not me. Afterwards, there was a reception for fifth and sixth graders under a huge white tent in the back of the school, and all the kids found their parents, and I didn't mind at all that my mom and dad hugged me like crazy, and when Via wrapped her arms around me and swung me left to right for about 20 times. Then Papa and Tata hugged me, and Aunt Kate and Uncle Poe and Uncle Ben, everyone kind of teary-eyed and wet-cheeked, but Miranda was the funniest. She was crying more than anyone else and squeezed me so tight that Via had to practically pry her off of me, which made them both laugh. Everyone started taking pictures of me and pulling out their flips, and then Dad got me, Summer, and Jack together for a group shot. We put our arms around each other's shoulders, and for the first time I can remember, I wasn't even thinking about my face. I was just smiling a big, fat, happy smile for all the different cameras clicking at me. Flash, flash, click, click, smiling away at Jack's parents, and Summer's mom started clicking. Then Rita and Maya came over, flash, flash, click, click, and then Charlotte came over and asked if she could take a picture with us, and we were like, sure, of course. And then Charlotte's parents were snapping away at our little group along with everyone else's parents. And the next thing I knew, the two Maxes came over, and Henry and Miles and Savannah. The Namas came over, and Shemana, and we were all in this big, tight huddle as parents clicked away like we were on the red carpet somewhere. Luca, Isaiah, Nino, Pablo, Tristan, Ellie. I lost track of who else came over. Everybody practically, and all I knew for sure that is that we were all laughing and squeezing in tight against each other, and no one seemed to care if it was my face that was next to theirs or not. In fact, I don't mean to brag here, but it kind of felt like everyone wanted to get close to me. The walk home, we walked to our house for cake and ice cream after the reception, and Jack and his parents and his little brother Jamie, Summer and her mom, Uncle Poe and Aunt Kate, Uncle Ben, Tata, Papa, Justin and Via, and Miranda, Mom and Dad. It was one of those great June days when the sky is completely blue and sun is shining, but it's not so hot you wish you were on that beach instead. It was just perfect day. Everyone was happy. I felt like I was floating the Star Wars hero music in my head. I walked with Summer and Jack and just couldn't stop cracking up. Everything made us laugh. We were in a giggly kind of mood. We were all someone has to do where all someone has to do is look at you and you start laughing. I heard Dad's voice up ahead and looked up. He was telling everyone a funny story, and as they walked down Amesfort Avenue, the grown-ups were all laughing too. It was like Mom always said, Dad could be a comedian. I noticed Mom wasn't walking with a group of grown-ups, so I looked behind me. She was hanging back a bit, smiling to herself like she was thinking of something sweet. She seemed happy. I took a few steps back and surprised her by hugging her as she walked. She put her arm around me and gave me a squeeze. Thank you for making me go to school, I said quietly. She hugged me close and leaned down and kissed the top of my head. Thank you, Augie, she said softly. For what? For everything you've given us, she said, for coming into our lives, for being you. She bent down and whispered in my ear, You really are a wonder, Augie. You are a wonder. The end. So for the next couple of pages, you have an appendix, which at the end is all of Mr. Brown's precepts. So I encourage you to read them because one of your activities is about a precept. I really hope that you enjoyed this book. And I'm glad that you're going to have it because you'll be able to share it with your sister or brother or cousins or even a good friend, because this is a great book about being kind, but not just being kind. Remember, guys, it's kind of like being kind times 1,000, always going above and beyond. Be extra kind to people, and we can all make the world a better place. I look forward to our final conclusion activity. So don't forget to send all of your attachments on the email so that tomorrow hopefully we'll be able to see it, okay? If you send your attachments, you'll have a chance of winning a prize. All right, talk to you soon.